this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, the 5th of March? January, February, March? January, February, May? I think it's March, yeah. The third month, whatever that is. So, we have been kind of forced into later streams for this week, and honestly, that has gotten me more views than normal, so I kind of have to question if there isn't perhaps a wiser idea here around always streaming around 7 or 8 in the evening. Not sure I really believe that, but I have seen more day one views. Of course, the numbers aren't blowing anybody's socks off by any means. It's still like 9 views in a live stream, which honestly, this probably was the goal of YouTube in the first place, was to introduce features like live streaming and promote that heavily and try to look like they were actually competing with Twitch, when really all they were doing was getting more work out of their employees that they don't pay as far as YouTube creators, without actually properly compensating the creators for their work. Because at the end of the day, YouTube is only interested in just flooding the internet with more and more content that they can own. It's just a war to own everything. Much like the equivalent of, say, Netflix, Netflix versus Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime's method of operation seems to be to try and acquire just as much content as possible, regardless of quality, where Netflix tries to at least curate it a little bit. And then, I suppose, when you are making your own first-party content, this oddly is going to equal exactly 1,500. Interesting. I almost want to open another pack just to make sure that 1,500 isn't some magic top line number that you can't go any higher with. We're still trying to open enough packs here to get all the tradables. Which, there's a decent chance I'll have like every single platinum card in 2 or 3 copies before we even unlock tradables. Liquefy extras. Yep. There's no problem going over 1,500. Okay. So, as far as the accountability section today, I'm still playing Danganronpa. I probably have 2 or 3 more runs through it. I guess we need to play Dragoncraft and Shadowcraft today. And I'm playing the extra new game content, which is pretty boring. No, that would be Bloodcraft. I guess we'll do Dragoncraft here and try that. Hope that works. It probably won't. But yeah, so much of the content for the extra game of Danganronpa is not new content, and I'm just using a walkthrough at this point to get all the secondary date sections unlocked, which you had to get the first date sections that were in the main game before you could do the secondary date sections that are in the 1.2 reloaded content. So yeah, I'm just using a walkthrough through that, and then I'm fast forwarding through pretty much everything else, because all of the other dialogue has been seen multiple times. The mini game of collecting components to build Monokuma backups is super easy to do because all my characters are at either level 8 or level 9 as far as item collection, and the only thing I could even level them up for now would be the secondary ability of cleaning the school, which you have to keep the school relatively clean. But honestly, you also could easily get enough resources to build items that would clean the school for you and not have a single character ever focused on actually cleaning. So getting cleaning up from like level 2 to level 9 probably would take a lot of time, and there's not really a good reason to do it, but there's kind of nothing else to do. And there is a slight calculation there should you buy items that would level up cleaning themselves, or should you just have the characters clean and earn the experience themselves. It all sounds very RPG-ish, but in reality it is boring and ridiculous and just in the way. There's definitely easier ways that this could have been integrated into the main game. And then after I do the side game, there's like one point of content I definitely want to see if I can find, because there's like 2 small places where there's a branching path in Danganronpa, and I'd like to see those sections, and then that's pretty much it. I'm still trying to get all the achievements, which is just an insane amount of committing more time on top of a visual novel that has taken a lot of your time up already. I did watch the last of Game Grumps just now, covering Danganronpa, and they did just the main story and stopped as the credits rolled, or stopped at the end of the credits, and so they're not going to do the extra game content, which is fine, I suppose. Even in their last episode, since I missed a few episodes once I stopped watching, they are still very much sticking to doing just improv comedy, and they enjoyed Danganronpa maybe a little bit more than I did, but they enjoyed it in a very different way than I think it's supposed to be enjoyed. But I could be wrong about that, frankly. It could very much be a case that you are never supposed to take Danganronpa seriously. The game itself barely takes itself seriously. You were supposed to have fun with the insane archetypes of characters and the insane characters in general. The only thing that's really confusing me as far as maybe unlockable content is there is a unlockable image that shows everybody escaping with their lives at the end of the game, and I don't see any way that happens. Like, it just doesn't seem realistic. It makes sense in the alternate universe extra game that everybody would escape with their lives, but it doesn't make sense in the main story. But then even the extra game does seem to be like an alternate universe. Time travel seems to be involved, and things seem to be changing, which opens up the door that in Danganronpa 2, whenever I get to play it, I wouldn't be surprised if it is that it is a case that it is kind of an alternate universe and all the people are alive again, and they don't try to introduce more characters or just heavily rely on the remaining characters that would have been alive otherwise. Let's see, I can do this, and then I can do this. But yeah, it kind of would make more sense that it's either an alternate universe or a whole group of new students in the second game, or it's all the students from the first game back alive somehow. But that does also tell a weird story, because if none of the events of the main story matter and nobody dies, then there really wasn't much of a journey. You're starting back at square one, and all of 15 of the students would simply not trust each other and have no relationship to each other. And the whole game would just be very, very similar to the first game. And the way the new content in the reload, it really plays it out. It seems like it is an alternate timeline, but you do still remember some of the events of the first timeline. So the whole thing gets a little more complicated. Did I do anything else as far as the accountability section in the past 2 days? Not really. Maybe made a few tweaks on my router, still trying to tweak things in. Still thinking about buying a new phone, which I think is probably the real solution to something like that. Alright, so I can do this. And then, what do we want to do? Something like that. And then that. And that. And then hit that. If I evolve this, then I would just be tied with him as far as evolution points. Yeah, I needed to start uploading some videos, so I did upload a little bit of videos and that, but that's about it. I definitely need to start scheduling. I'm still not doing that. And I'm still having trouble with Twitter not being consistent with what's on Steam in particular showing up. So I'm going through what's on Steam's Twitter feed in general. Still tons of other things to work on that I haven't gotten around to working on. Let's see.
Designs are like unhatched dragon eggs.
This. This is a weird card. I don't know if I can actually make it work.
Be gone. Hatch inspiration. Eureka.
Hit that.
Oh, the
And
blueprint.
then hit that. And do that. Honestly, I really would like to just be done with Danganronpa because it has become very much a sleepy style of gameplay, and it would let me get back to scheduling, which definitely needs to happen. There is also a point here where I'm still trying to read the comic books that I started reading, and I've committed to that, and so I need to find extra little spots when I can sit down and relax. Although I do have like wall sconces for lighting, backlighting to read with coming, so it probably wouldn't be too crazy to wait until those wall sconces arrive so I can install them. I'm gonna have to be fairly careful about getting them at the same height and level. Level probably is not going to be that big of a deal. Anyways, so games we have. There's a ton of bad games. Like we have things like this, Azrael for $2.54 English early access. And so I opened a bunch of things without really curating. Here we have Star Squadron Student Driver, which is free, at least, English full audio. And I think probably isn't even worth mentioning that these aren't making it to the fall list. Maybe that it should be the default to just say nothing, and then if we do add something to the fall list, then we should say something. Like Freelancer Life Simulator here is $4.24, bunch of languages. Nothing there. Here we have a game called Realm Engine Virtual Tabletop, which this might be something. They're calling it a system agnostic tabletop world builder that supports both building and running your choice of role-playing games. So Hero Quest type designs in virtual reality, which I imagine you can play Dungeons and Dragons and any other system, any other tabletop RPG games with something like this. It's free to play English full audio, but early access. That's weird pricing schedule, because I don't know how you're gonna be able to make money and continue to add content to something like this unless it's gonna be through DLC. And that's what you would really want to see on something like this, is that it was constantly adding content and it's not just done with itself. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. It's a fairly niche product, so I wouldn't be surprised if it never gets any reviews on top of everything else. But yeah, it would be interesting to see if people actually liked it and it continued to be worked on. Here we have a game called Zombie. This looks like an old game, an old Wolfenstein 3D clone. But I don't know if it actually is or if it's just a brand new game designed to look like that. English only. There's definitely not anything particularly interesting there. Let's see. Bullet bike. Discard a card. Next we have Mystery Tales Master of the Puppets Collector's Edition from Big Fish Game. Anything labeled Collector's Edition at the end tends to be a Big Fish Game hidden object game. What's interesting here is that it seems like it's been a rather long time since we've seen a Big Fish game come out. It's $12.59, still pretty much the same price as before. Let's see. If this came out March 5th, yeah, the last one to come out on Steam was December 21st, so either they just didn't have any more games to come out in between December 21st and March 5th, or they didn't bother to put them on Steam. Big Fish Games mostly tries to convince people to buy the games from their own storefront first. They don't want to specifically go into the realm of having other people make money off of their products. Let's see. Next we have a game called Okrot. It's literally a book. Yep, and it does look like it's literally a book. Free. What's funny here is, on the face of it, this looks like a stupid idea to take a real book and then make it put it in a 3D environment, so you're reading a book in like a 3D environment. There's no VR support here or anything like that. Well, that might even make more sense. But on the other hand, there are animations, like single page animations, that seem to show up, which if you just had an ebook, you wouldn't really easily be able to see these animations in the way they're intended. But you're not really seeing them the way they're intended even here. Is this perhaps a twist on how to get around the dying of libraries and bookstores and still have a book reading experience that doesn't involve having to just blindly buy a book, say from Amazon.com, and having it delivered to you? Weirdly, it puts you in this position though where it doesn't kind of matter. Like, Okrot may be an interesting concept as the next big thing in distribution and printing of books, instead of not actually printing books that have pictures in them. But it is basically nothing as far as video games are concerned. You have to compare this to a visual novel, which have been around for decades, and when you compare this to a visual novel, it's completely and totally lacking. So we already have systems for putting books in a game format. Okay. Can I do anything that would keep me alive?
Be gone. Darn it all.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Anton Ball Deluxe, which seems like it's a collection of a couple of pixely looking games, a couple arcade games. $15.99 English full audio. I just don't think there's anything here to justify this. This video that's playing screams to me joke or troll game. This is one of those games that it might actually be more than it seems, but the graphics are just so pixely and bad by my standards nowadays that I'm not willing to give it the time of day. All right.
It won't be long now. Darn it all.
See, here we have a game called The Conversation with Mr. Rabbit, which clearly is just a low effort visual novel for $1.99. So nothing there. Next we have Boss of This Gym, which clearly is a Russian troll game, joke game, for 99 cents, claiming full audio in every single language and lots of language support. Next we have a game called Remnants, which looks like it's just a survival game. It's already mixed reviewed. Early access, $15.99. Generally thinking, I imagine if I needed to cover any game like that, it would be Rust, and pretty much only Rust, because everything else just doesn't have a level of relevancy. If we did this, and we did this. If I could evolve this, that would be great, but I don't have a way to evolve it. Next, we have a game on Steam called Circuit Superstars, which
A fitting
it
end.
actually has a decent amount of polish here. It's positive, it's early access, bunch of languages, third-party EULA. That's really the only real problem here. It's being published by Square Enix. I'll put that on the follow list. It would be hard to justify a game like this, though. Still, like, this feels like a racing game that would be interesting for about 5 minutes, and that's it. And unfortunately, we have another case where all of the games, or a lot of the games that I have the cover today are all at the front.
You beckon? It's just the beginning.
Did someone call for a medic?
That's
Time to say goodbye.
pretty much all I could do.
Drink every drop.
So
Concoctions
I can
away.
kill that.
You're wide open.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Monkey Split, which actually is some cutesy
You're a
art.
solid fighter.
If this is an asset flip of a monkey, I kind of would like to see more games with this monkey showing up. But the actual game is questionable. It's early access, free to play, online PvP. Let's see. Supposed to be collecting the stuff in the cardboard box while running around from the possessed monkeys. Apparently that's the game you're supposed to be playing. Yeah, there's no gameplay concept here. The cutesy artwork of the monkeys set aside, there's just no game concept. Alright, well. In all fairness, if you were going to play as a monkey, you kind of then immediately want to have the agility and maneuverability of a monkey, and programming that would be fairly difficult to do. Yeah, mocapping a monkey probably wouldn't go well.
Okay. No more crying.
So you'd have to get very creative as far as the animations and the movements, as far as playing as a monkey. And honestly, I don't know if you can write a story that's interesting enough where you'd play as a monkey for a long time. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Mind Lock, and this trailer doesn't really seem to show anything. So let's look at the screenshots. Seems like it's a platformer with where you're mostly in silhouette. There's some gameplay. Yeah, it really doesn't seem like there's anything there. Early access, $3.99 English full audio. Next we have Lion Quest Infinity, which seems like it might be a 3D physics game with some perhaps weird visuals. I'm not sure if there really is a game here, though, or if this is just a lot of asset flipped stuff. It just feels all over the place. $9.89 English only. I'm just not impressed with the way that looks.
Do not seek what is not there.
Next, we have a game called The Haunted Tunnel, which looks like it's an RPG horror game, RPG Maker horror game. 59 cents English only. Once I start getting tabs that aren't Steam listings, I'll try and toggle between those. As far as actual video game news, it's not a lot. Like the developer of Atelier Ryza 2 said Atlas Riser 3 depends on how much support 2 gets, which is honest but also manipulative, to say the least. It's not untrue, of course, of any game that if you make a sequel and it sells terribly, you're not going to make that third game in a trilogy. Almost certainly.
No, literally.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Private Agent, which looks like it's a VR game of no real interest. $4.99, English and Japanese. Let's see. Discard a card. Deal 1 damage to random follower.
These weapons are for hunting dragons.
Next, we have a game called Silent Earth, which looks like it's a full text-based interactive fiction. Even this, though, it looks better than Okrot did as far as implementing the idea of a book with some pictures. Like, it really is making an argument for somebody not even bothering to try to have a someone not even bothering to try to adapt their media to the standard form of how a game would be made. It screams of arrogance, I suppose, more than anything.
Can I haunt you
Get back
too?
here.
And see, now I can definitely feel the problem with starting to stream at 7 p.m. is because while I may not actually go to sleep anytime soon, I am definitely sleepy and yawning. I suppose that would not work either, to do sleepy broadcasts or sleepy live streams intentionally. Work
Another takes its place.
like every single work day, Monday through Friday and maybe Saturday, to pre-record and then have a 3-hour live stream right when you're about to fall asleep. That would definitely not work for me. Like, there's been so many times where I've nearly fallen asleep streaming. See, next we have a game called 4th and Inches, and it's being published by Ziggurat and developed by Accolade. So this was a 1988 game, football game.
You're a solid fight.
I think there might be some fandom here, particularly if you like something like NES football for the NES made by Nintendo, but you know that's never coming to PC. $4.68 for this game, though, really doesn't make sense. However, there might be some relevancy here. Bubsy 2 Fur came out in 2015. That's the last time Accolade apparently released a real game. Now it seems like they are just releasing old games. Very possibly Accolade is a different company than it used to be. And Ziggurat, as the publisher, is publishing pretty much all of these. These were the Data East published games earlier also. So, as a publisher, they're kind of flooding the Steam market. But now would be, I suppose, a decent time to flood the Steam market when there's very little competition. They probably could do it more staggered on a daily basis or a weekly basis. But yeah, getting their games to run using some emulator, I'm sure, and being able to publish that on Steam is smart, particularly when you look at games like this, like TKO, which is an Accolade game. You know that these aren't going to really sell or catch anybody's attention other than people who are really nostalgic. This again is an instance where this probably is not as good as playing Punch Out on the NES. I am always looking for a boxing game, so I'll put this on the follow list, but I bet we also don't ever get any reviews for these games. These definitely are old games that should have been on Steam a long time ago, back when Steam was still building things and growing. I suppose it is worth mentioning that Valve has announced that they've completely abandoned any more work on Artifact, the card game. They seemingly wanted to see the player base grow while it was still in beta, which basically set themselves up for failure before the word go. And they definitely did that in the first place, is that they didn't have a finished, polished product when they first tried to release it in its first form. Then they tried to have a beta and make a different type of experience in a second form, and it didn't grow because it was still labeled as a beta. It's basically a story of just how incompetent Valve is at the current moment as to actually advertising and selling games. They're so used to people just buying something because it has Valve on the developer line that they don't even know how to properly do market research and advertise and make sure the product they're making is something that people actually want. Which, there's a huge irony there, certainly, in the fact that Valve as a storefront works perfectly well, even though more than likely the people running Valve and Steam are actually not as competent as you would think at selling games. Or perhaps there's just such a fine line distinction there that they're really good at running a storefront where other people can sell games, but they're very bad at selling even their own games on their own storefront. They could have definitely pushed Artifact a lot more if they wanted to. Moving on, we have Micropro Soccer, which just another 1988 game. It's English only, $4.68. I'll follow that. Still, the price tag is still high. Next, we have Highway Traffic Racer, which looks like it's an infant runner, for lack of a better description. $2.96, English, full audio. I don't see anything interesting there. Next we have Fast Break, which is basketball from 1989. Which again, I'll put on the follow list, $4.68. I'm setting myself up for a lot more work next time I do a follow list cleanup. Next we have Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2021. There's just nothing here. $34.99. English. Next we have a game called Charlie the Roach, which looks like it's possibly a platformer game. I think it is. Although it kind of feels like it might also be an adventure game. 11 levels for $2.99. We'll give it a follow. I'm not sure. I really think there's a game here worth your time, but we'll check it out.
Be gone.
Breach of contract, huh?
Let's see. Next, we have a game called Neon Shooter, which is just a neon top-down shooter for $1.99. Next, we have a game called Midsoa, which seems to be an assembly of images. It says it's not a game, it's a toy. It's free to play, English only. Next, we have a game called Paradise Lost, which is an asset flip, low effort, first person shooter by the looks of it. Although with such bad graphics, those might be original graphics. $49.99, incredibly expensive. Let's see.
I'll show you the
Do
meaning
this.
of love.
Then do
That
that.
won't do.
Good draw.
Then end the turn. Next, we have a game called Jei Vr, which looks like it's a VR first-person shooter, and kind of nothing, just stand in one place and shooter. You see this purple-haired character, but you don't actually get to see that character. You're either playing as it, or it just isn't in any of these screenshots. $3.99 for a VR game is incredibly cheap. English full audio. They're, I think, implying that this is just stage one of a much longer plan to add levels and bosses and new mechanics, and yeah, this game should be labeled early access at that point, and it isn't, unless it has just come out of early access and has all of that stuff. But if it had come out of early access, they should have updated their store page. Next, we have a game called Outside In, a co-op game for 2. I guess this is inside the body, shooting germs in a roguelike. It does have a kind of interesting visual style, different from what you normally see for VR or just an average game. Early access $4.49, English and Vietnamese, which is not a common language combination either. So yeah, I guess I could put that on the fall list, and it really can't go anywhere from that. Next, we have a game called Far Away Director's Cut, which the concept of having director's cut video games have not been a thing lately, which is a good thing. We don't need the concepts of director's cuts coming out. This looks like a puzzle game very similar to the game Witness. They're calling it a modern tribute to Myst. That's fair too. $8.99. English full audio. So in September they moved the release. Alright, well, let's put that on the fall list. Then my network needs to retry. I feel like for Shadowverse in particular, needing to retry is just a thing that's going to happen even if my network's running perfectly fine. There's just kind of no way around it. Although particularly right now, the only thing that I'm using on the network is uploading the video, which uses a lot of bandwidth, and
This one's for my family.
and downloading for this game. There's not really much else going on. We're downloading images and things on the web pages. of Chrome, but I hardly have my phone doing anything extra or any other computer doing anything extra at the moment. Which that will be a point at some point if I ever get the server working, is that some of the backups it will take up bandwidth, and I need to use the quality of service to make sure that doesn't go badly as best as I can. Moving on, we have a game called Cute Animal Jigsaw Puzzles, but apparently there's only 12 of them. The imagery is cute. I would say, though, some of the imagery seems to maybe be slightly inconsistent. Like, this character seems more anime-esque than any of the other animations. Yeah, that little mermaid character, but I suppose that's not too off design. $1.79, English, Spain, Spanish, and Portuguese, Brazilian languages. Not a terrible jigsaw puzzle game amongst a plethora of jigsaw puzzle games that exist on Steam, but I would say there's some issues there. Still, to make it very, very impossible to justify actually buying even that, even if you were fairly obsessed with jigsaw puzzles and cute images. $2 for 12 simple puzzles seems like seems like it's too expensive. Next we have an Asian game here called Big Baya, which looks to me like it's some kind of card game with blocky imagery. Kind of a, maybe less of a card game and more of just a character placement game. With pixel art. Early access, English not supported, $11.99, Chinese only. So I guess that makes that an easy decision.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw. It's all yours.
Eureka! Oh, waffle cakes!
Strike!
So, you withstood it all.
Next we have a game called Quintessenia. I went real quiet there. This is just an RPG maker game. English not supported, Spain, Spanish, free to play. Next we have a game called Placefront, which looks like a SimCity clone for $7.99. Let's go ahead and do that, I guess. Next we have a game called Boxoku. And I would have had a short stream today also if I had just not opened all this garbage. 89 cents English. Next we have Rise of the Betrayer. We may have already talked about this game. It looks like a very possibly good Metroidvania game. Maybe there's just too many items. That might be a problem. It's coming soon, though. English only. I guess I could put it on the follow list, but it doesn't really need to be on the follow list. Rush. Give +1/+1 and rush to follower.
Though I set, I will rise again.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Not Going Back, which looks like nothing for $2.99, English only. Here we have a game called The Forgotten, which looks like it's suffering from some dark screenshot syndrome. Also, I'm not seeing any elements of gameplay here, and just instead empty backgrounds, which makes me assume that this is a horror game where you just wander around the dark and not really accomplish anything else. First person psychological horror game is what they're describing it as. And looking at the trailer, it kind of just feels like it's a walking simulator in the horror genre. $7.99 English full audio. Is there any reason to give this a chance? Not really, but it's polished enough, so I'm gonna kind of violate my own rule and give it a chance anyways. Interesting. Next we have a game called Overture Music Visualization, which obviously is just a music visualizer. Let's see, at this point, that's where we have screenshots not loading. This might just be a limitation, frankly, on Chrome's cache size more than anything else. Yeah, I'm just not going to be able to stop myself from yawning at this rate.
By your will, O Lord.
Next we have a game called Chess Lock, which seems to be chess, although it seems to have RPG elements also, which just seems weird. $5.59 English only. Although I'd like to see how that plays out, if that can really make sense to anybody.
I always go with the flow.
Did someone call for a medic?
See, this could do 4 damage.
Bottoms up.
Next we have a game called Duel on Board, which looks like just doing duels on a ship. $7.19 English only. No, English in a bunch of languages. I don't think there's enough here to justify that price. Yeah, I think they're asking too much, which, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this idea of just going quiet and just moving back to the screen and leaving it on yeah is successful, frankly, as a way of saving a few lines of dialogue that I end up saying for almost every game. I feel like I'd almost need an intro every stream to say, if I don't mention that it's going to the follow list, it's not going to the follow list.
The world cycles on.
Okay.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Next we have a game on Steam called Ring of Dragons, which is obviously just a Chinese game, free to play. Alright, and at this point, I am so tired. We've barely been going an hour. But I think I'm just gonna have to try and burn through the game listings very quickly. Here's an RPG maker for $13.49 that I don't think I'm even gonna really try to play any of the card game at all. I'm just gonna leave it and play stall tactics, much like how I play normally. When I'm off screen, I'll distract myself quite a bit. So come over here to multiplayer, and then do something like this, and then do something like this, and then hit OK. Here we have a game called Lock Mess, which seems to be a single screen puzzle game. There might be something to that for $1.79. So I'll put that on the fall list. Here we have a game called Postcards from Sock Pop, who we've floods Steam with low effort games. $2.99 English only. Here we have Warplanes World War I Fighters, which, okay, that looks like that has some polish to it. Requires VR though. It's $14.99 third party account. So that's probably not something that would make the long run. Let's see. Next we have a game called Life is Sad, which looks like it's just an asset flip, like walking simulator story. 99 cents. Next we have a game called Project Terminus Vr, which seems like you end up in the underground tunnels and are fighting some kind of monsters in VR for $19.99. The visual quality here, somewhat questionable. Yeah, I think there's just some bad graphics for a game like this, and asking $19.99 at that level of graphics is probably a mistake. Next we have a game called Peekaboo Light Hide and Seek, which obviously is just a low effort asset flip hide and seek game. Early access online PvP for 89 cents. Next we have a game called Slot Car VR, which, yeah, I don't really see a reason why you want to play slot cars in VR instead of just using like RV cars. It feels like you could put almost any other racing game in a slot car mode and just limit the direction it can go and limit it down to one button, increasing or decreasing speed, because that's all you control with slot cars. This is English and German. Yeah, I think it's no for me on that one. Here we have Airport CEO, which is just a simulation game for $24.99 with a bunch of languages, which is way too expensive. I don't need to reload to show these images, because even looking at the thumbnails, you know they're nothing. Next we have Loop Hero, which I feel like I've put this on the follow list before, but apparently not. This one is overwhelmingly positive, so I want to put it on the follow list. Like, normally speaking, I would just put it on the wish list. It does kind of look like it's not the kind of game I'd want to play, but I don't know, at a certain level I think probably is something that should be on the wish list. $12.74 is asking only a little bit more than what I would expect a game that looks like this to ask for. Next we have Evil Inside Prologue, which is mixed. Seems to be a kind of higher quality level horror game. And the Evil Inside isn't even out yet, so we can ignore that. Next we have a game called Cursed House, which seems like you have to draw a line by matching ingredients or match 3 to get ingredients out of the way. Yep. $6.99 English only. Next we have Slime Fantasy: The Search for the Lost Sword, which is just a Game Boy looking puzzler platformer. $3.39 English only. Let's see. Next we have the Sealed Ampule, which is tagged as a mystery dungeon action RPG. You're seeing actual 3D modeling, although it is kind of a soft animation style. If anything, it kind of feels like it's a Westerner trying to do an anime style and putting a little bit of a spin here. It feels like this might very well just be a dungeon crawler from the screenshot, so it's still very well may not be that interesting to me, but can't say I hate what I'm seeing. Might be fairly boring game too. This is $17.99 Japanese full audio. Put that on the follow list. Next we have a game called Until the Last Plane, which looks like it's just a shoot 'em up for $10.39. Bunch of languages. Next we have a game on Steam called Everhood, which looks like it is a line rider jumper, for lack of a better term. Kind of feels like an infinite runner, but you're not actually running, and you're instead taking on bosses and pretty much nothing else. Let's see, $9.99, bunch of languages. Think we'll probably skip that.
I'll face you head on.
Next we have Ranch Simulator, and then a bunch more in the subtitle. You can see it's already mixed. It's just an asset flip survival game. $19.99.
Ever seen a dragon on ice before?
Next we have a game called Plastopocalypse, which seems like it's an under the sea game of no real major interest. Early access, $7.19. I'll give this a follow, just to be certain.
I've never been past before.
Yeah, we have something called Parkour Game, and so we already know it's a low effort game because it has a low effort title. It's $2.09 English, allegedly full audio.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
Bloomberg has a rumor that they're standing by that the Nintendo is going to announce a new Switch model with a 7-inch OLED display. Reportedly, when it's plugged in and docked, it will support 4K output. Seemingly nothing else has been leaked as far as changes, though, so you might have minimal improvement as far as Joy-Con drift and the Joy-Cons in general just breaking, but we're not going to, for instance, get a D-pad replacing this. the one controller turning into two controller concept is something they're still somewhat committed to, which is kind of pointless. And I think they pretty much just expect you to buy a Pro controller anyways. Slightly better graphics with an OLED is nice and all, but it isn't a major change. That's not really a major change on anything, unless it has more CPU cycles or more RAM or more storage or more expandable storage. For a game console, it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea if it had a second micro SD slot so that you could swap some things around. Having Bluetooth built in would probably be better, because I don't believe it does have Bluetooth for headsets or wireless controllers built in, which seems insane. But it's not going to be like a major change from the sounds of it, and so it might not even be really worth it to to get the new Nintendo Switch model that comes out, instead waiting potentially 2 more years or 4 more years until a Switch 2 or whatever the Switch is going to replace comes out. We have someone in the chat saying, what game are you playing for now? I'm barely paying any attention to play Shadowverse right now as the game, as the distraction, as I'm about to fall asleep, and I'm just trying to cover through video game news. So I probably at that point was at Gamatsu's article here. Fantasy Tavern Sextet Volume 3 post-delayed days for Switch launches March 18th. This is the final chapter in the romance visual novel series. And so here you see a bunch of anime characters in maid outfits or barmaid outfits with decent amount of cleavage. Decent amount of cleavage there. So yeah, another visual novel coming out for the Switch. I'm hearing stories of a visual novel, at least one, that's going to have to be censored for Steam. So it does seem like Steam is swinging back into more of a pro-censorship status than a anti-censorship status. Although Steam seems to sometimes care, sometimes not care. They're just incredibly inconsistent there, and Steam needs somebody who is either going to take the reins one way or the other. If Steam just puts its foot down and says we're going to curate adult content and then not bother to curate any other kind of content on their storefront, at least they can be consistent there. Or they need to say we're not going to curate everything, which is what they pretend like they say. Or they need to curate everything and then say, well, we're not going to have adult content because we don't want it. Also, we're not going to have low effort asset flip games and money laundering schemes showing up through Steam Direct. Yeah, so Nutch Lotus says you're playing the Shadowverse. The game is called Shadowverse, yes. That's what this is. It's a very, very popular card game in Japan, but it's not very popular in the West, so it does not particularly compare to, say, Magic the Gathering Arena or Hearthstone. And I'm mostly playing this game until Ben Brode's company Second Dinner comes out with their Marvel card game that they've been licensed to make, and that's probably coming out in a year or two, hopefully not 3 or 4. The idea there would be like to play the Marvel card game. I think that's going to be very, very popular. Oops, just dropped my mouse. Um, but yeah, I played Hearthstone for a very long time, and then finally got tired of Hearthstone and got tired of Activision Blizzard in general, and swore it off. Then I played Magic the Gathering Arena for a little while, right before they started announcing development on the mobile version of their game, and where they would make a they would gain a lot more audience once the mobile game comes out. But then they banned me for a week for some stupid false accusation, and at that point that just proved them to be inconsistent. Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro. On top of which, Magic the Gathering just has a ridiculous amount of BS around it as far as the ridiculous price, even for a collectible card game, that they would like you to spend, even in digital forms, and the fact that games, cards just cycle out of seasons very, very quickly in Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering, as a concept and as a player base, and as the cards have existed for many, many years, is actually very polished and very good. It's just there's terrible business management around it. And since I was playing only on the computer version, I don't have to deal with any like hardcore alpha players of Magic the Gathering who might be pains in the butt or super nerds or anything like that. So I was having a decent time with Magic the Gathering. So now I'm on the Shadowverse, and this is like the third game. Shadowverse is in a weird position as a collectible card game because it is trying to not be super anime about the way the characters look, although it's somewhat like that. But it also kind of started with more anime style characters that were a little bit more lewd. You'd see a little bit more thigh, a little bit more cleavage, and then they decided to make an anime and relaunch a Switch version that is much more child friendly. And so at that point they started to come back and censor a couple of the images. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has censored some of their images too for the West. And it is pretty much on the same level as far as the number of cards that were censored. It's not a ton of them, but any censorship does tend to annoy the player base. There is a ton of tie-in events for Shadowverse, much more than Magic the Gathering had, and Hearthstone never had any tie-in events that I saw. So you will see advertisements or card backs for like Cup Noodle, or you'll see a character that is from a different anime show or anime game. Most recently it was, I believe, Blaze Blue crossover events. Shadowverse just introduced a battle pass, which sucks because they are trying to make more money, and I'd prefer not to get suckered into spending a ton of money on battle passes. So I'm actively avoiding buying any battle passes or buying any other cards. Every time I move to a new collectible card game, it inherently sets you back a little bit because you have a bunch of old cards you'd want to try and collect and just in CE, and that's very, very difficult. It's impossible with something like Magic the Gathering. There's no way even in Magic Arena you could get a lot of the older cards, and Hearthstone really doesn't make it super easy either to get the older cards, whereas they are making some changes, and generally I would like to see a card game that says all of our content from 4 years ago is going to be free to new players, and that will certainly irritate old players, but it's kind of the only way pull something off like that and actually have any success, or have the cards have value later on. But they definitely don't want the old cards to have value. They want them to become worthless. Not close. Well, actually, I'm playing that game, and I accept that the meta in Shadowverse is so damn broken. Yeah, well, I haven't gotten into any of the deep dives as far as net decking and looking up decks to build on Shadowverse. I just haven't even gained enough momentum or interest in it. I just kind of use it as a background to kill time when I'm talking about video game news. There is kind of some obvious issues in that there isn't a lot of randomization of decks that you come against. It seems like it is kind of just the same people every time, or the same cards every time. Even if you're playing in the unlimited series, it still seems like you're kind of running into the same cards every time. And there just aren't as many key phrases and strategies and ways to win in Shadowverse. I think that is intentional to make it more simplistic and easy to jump in on, but compared to Magic the Gathering in particular, like where there's all kinds of cards that completely change the rules of the game and explain ridiculous amounts of new rules on the text of the cards, you don't have really any of that in Shadowverse. Shadowverse tries to have too many hero classes, I think, and if they'd limited themselves down to 5 or 6, they probably could have polished every expansion a little bit better. But yeah, mostly I don't even really try in Shadowverse. I just hope I either get somebody who quick disconnects and gives up and I get a free win there, or hope I can play some strategy. But I haven't gone back and made a deck rebuild in probably 3 or 4 months, and I definitely should have. Like, this next expansion that happens might be a great time to rebuild the decks. There's also just a lot of weirdness around how quickly expansions happen in Shadowverse, although they also seem like they're kind of fairly nice in that the expansion packs in Shadowverse contain considerably fewer cards than expansion packs in other style of games, collectible card games. Of course, Magic the Gathering is a great example of re-releasing packs that give you lands over and over again, or re-releasing a 2/2 bear as some other kind of character without really changing anything other than the art. Anyways, moving on, Komatsu has an article here. Raiden 4 X Mikado Remix is coming to the West. So the side-scrolling shooter, shoot 'em up game, Raiden 4 is, what is it coming to the West on? Well, it's coming to the West on the Switch, April 22nd. Alright. Let's see. Puyo Puyo Tetris final update adds 4 playable characters, a spectator mode, and more on March 4th. This is the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Cross-gen online multiplayer is also being released. This game is for the PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, and Xbox Series.
I always catch the varmint. Eventually.
Still trying to just cover all the news. Maybe getting a bit of a second wind. So we'll look at some of the other games that came out on Steam. So, what's my favorite class in Shadowverse? Nutch Lotus asks. I think it's probably simplistic to say Forcecraft, just because that's the default one and that's the easiest one. to play. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I, in theory, would like the spellcraft class and spells fine, or even dragoncraft for that way. If there were multiple card combinations I could really play, and there was really a strategy I could fall in love with, but I just haven't delved deep enough to really think of anything like that. We can, after this game, look at like the statistics and just see how many games I've played of one specific class, and almost certainly it will be Forcecraft. But yeah. In a funny way, Shadowverse has been just the non-committal Rebound collectible card game I've played. And honestly, if I could find something that was fairly slow that I could ignore and pay no attention to for a long minute or two breaks in between each turn, and it wasn't a collectible card game, I would be fairly happy with playing that game instead. But then it also kind of needs to be a game that goes on forever, because I don't want to switch games that I live stream from very often. Right, so as far as ranked wins, we can see I have 187 ranked wins with Forcecraft. Yeah, Nudge Lotus, you mean Runecraft and Dragoncraft? Yeah, that's what I was talking about. There's things that you can do theoretically with Bloodcraft. There's things you can do with Runecraft and Dragoncraft and Shadowcraft and even Havencraft. Like, each one of these expansions kind of have great 3 card combinations or 2-turn combinations to win a game in theory, but I just haven't gotten the cards or spent the time to develop those kinds of combinations. So yeah, I mostly, when I first started playing, was all in Forcecraft, and as I lost momentum, I never really got to playing any of the other expansions much there. Yeah, 187 wins in that level 134 in Forcecraft, where I'm at like 85 for Swordcraft. Swordcraft is probably the most straightforward and boring expansion. 74 on Runecraft, 88 on Dragoncraft, 68 on Shadowcraft, 86 on Bloodcraft, 70 on Havencraft, and 81 on Portalcraft. So yeah. And yeah, mostly one of the things that is a problem, I think, with Shadowcraft in particular also is the fact that, unlike the way it works in Hearthstone or Magic Arena, you get a new daily quest for each of the 3 slots, and in this 4th temporary gems, which I kind of like the temporary gem system, but it's a confusing system to say the least. But you get each one of these every 24 hours, so unlike the other card games I mentioned, they want you to literally play like 3 times as much every single day. They want me right now to get Shadowcraft and Dragoncraft victories, and they want me to get just random ranked winnings, which means I should be playing ranked craft, and I can replace those things for lesser rewards, but it's not really worth it. I am frankly at the point where I think even the default decks are probably better off than some of the decks I've built so far. Nutula says, oh, 0-0, but my favorite class is Bloodcraft. I don't think that was supposed to be 0-0. I think that was an emoji. yeah, I definitely could see falling in love with Bloodcraft because it has an interesting concept. Each character pretty much does have an interesting concept around it. They don't particularly play the cards as well around that interesting concept, nor do they make particularly crazy cards that break the game balance. And in any collectible card games, there's two types of players. There are the pro players who want cards with no randomization in them, so that they can just play a deck that has a win ratio of like 51%, 56%, maybe even 60, 70 win ratio, and then they can just keep on playing all day, every day, until they get higher and higher in rank. And it's just a matter of odds and statistics then. Whereas I'm much more on the other side, where I'd like to be able to play games that have random effects, play cards that have random effects, and just have fun with it, and do something that's totally broken and totally crazy. So, for instance, in Bloodcraft, I would love it if there was a 1 mana card that you could play on the first turn that took away like all 19 of 20 lives and left you at 1 health, and then gave you like 10 orbs. So you would jump from the first step, all the way to having the maximum amount of orbs. But so even that would probably be completely unfair. Nuchalo says, so I play Bloodcraft deck all the time. I enter this game. Yeah, I can also see my Nightbot is just so broken. Let me take a moment to see if we can disable that, since Nightbot has been broken for a long time. I guess I haven't even mentioned anybody as far as the exclamation commands. In the chat, Nightbot. Let's see, default. See, timers. That's what it would be. Alright. Disable that. And disable that one. That'll stop Nightbot from saying no song is currently playing, because these songs stopped working.
How much is in it for me? I earned my fair share.
And see, this is a great example of why I need to play a collectible card game, is because if I get distracted, then the game will just keep on moving and it won't be no action whatsoever on the screen. Next we have a game on Steam here called Search Party Director's Cut, another game with Director's Cut in the name, and this looks like it's an RPG Maker horror game. The problem with having a horror game and then having small pixely art is that just doesn't seem like that makes any sense to me. As someone who's not really scared or afraid of even hyper-realistic graphics in horror games, I don't feel like a horror game ever would need bad graphics. And as someone who is very much a videophile and wants to see good graphics, I don't appreciate when I see bad graphics in a game. See, next we have a game on Steam called Poster Sticker, which almost seems like it's an attempt at doing a Paperboy spiritual clone,
Speak. You just gotta
but
listen.
by the looks of it, it looks like it's mostly an asset flip game, kind of like a Spider-Man clone more than anything else. Trying to get to specific places to then hold F, which takes forever to put up a poster, and then take a picture of it, which that doesn't quite make sense either. $4.99 English, German, Danish, and Russian. I'm gonna put that on the follow list just to see if maybe people like it, but looking at the graphics, it looks like garbage. It's just these characters in particular, it's not good enough. It looks like it's a cell phone game that's been ported. 4 damage to an enemy follower.
Oppose me and burn. Ceasing operation.
There we go. Actually, it seems like I might be making some progress here, and we may not have that many more tabs to go for today, which is great because I am probably going to get sleepy again fairly quickly here. And I definitely am not going to get the daily quest done. This is a thing as a YouTuber, if I had a secretary, some like unpaid intern or secretary, I'd totally have them play whatever collectible card game I'm playing for me after I streamed, and just be like, oh, I'm gonna have somebody else play the game. Which you could try to make that a bonus part of somebody's job, particularly if you're paying them. But it also could very quickly become a burden, even to have somebody else who enjoys playing Shadowverse play it for you. And undoubtedly I would need to hire an artist first and foremost to make thumbnails for my channel and try to do whatever they can to make more people watch my videos at the beginning, and then maybe at that point I could get an editor and get more feedback and become better at making the content. But at a certain level, I don't know if I'd ever really be that successful at improving the content to get a mass audience appeal going. But yeah. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Rosha's Golem, which is MS Paint level graphics. This is pretty much what my thumbnails would look like if I made thumbnails. This is just MS Paint level graphics. $3.99 English, allegedly full audio. Nothing interesting in that game. I feel like I had already seen this game, The Life and Suffering of Sir Bronte. We can see it's very positive. It must have been early access, but it's not on the follow list or the wish list, interestingly enough. And let's see. It's a, if I recall correctly, this would have been months and months ago. I believe this is a kind of story RPG where you're trying very hard not to end up dead. It seems like there's some polish on an interface. There seems like there are more RPG elements and not just branching narrative paths.
You're a solid fighter.
Seems like you kind of go through the entirety of someone's life, or you jump through a book of the entirety of someone's life, going backwards and forwards. A lot of these trailers are not showing, I think, how the game actually would play, unless there are just a decent number of cutscenes that work like that. I think this trailer, this first one, which would probably be the newest trailer, is the closest indicator of how it would play. It's a little risky at $17.99. It's English and Russian. Apparently I have a bundle here where I could complete my collection for $16.19. But I'm going to put this on the wish list, which means it's approved for me to purchase it if I get around to it. This other game, For the People, is also mostly positive, and it's more of a political intrigue game, which I don't know if I could really bother to play that. This one is also labeled more as a visual novel and less as a branching narrative kind of RPG game, so maybe they changed things up a little bit. Let's see. Where are we? Next we have a game on Steam called A Nasty Farm, which I guess maybe a platforming game where you're trying to free chickens. Maybe you're not trying to free them. 3D arcade game depicting the unclear situation of chicks trapped by Dr. Mazzy, a mad self-proclaimed scientist who's targeted the little defenseless chicks.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
It's hard to tell on this one. There might be something here, there might not. The trailer here is not really showing any actual gameplay. Let's look at the other video. Yeah, I just don't feel like there's an actual game here. If there is anything, it seems like it's barely a game. It's $3.99. It's English and Polish. I just don't feel like A Nasty Farm passes the mustard. Or passes the sniff test. Here we have Taisho X Alice Episode 3. I believe this is the game I was talking about earlier that is being released censored. And what's funny is the reason they know it's being released censored is because it has already been released on the Switch, or the game that I was talking about has already been released on the Switch in a less censored or uncensored version. So it's very weird to potentially see games come out on PC and then be more censored on Steam than what Nintendo is allowing, which Nintendo used to be very focused on being family friendly, but now seems to be more willing to be a console that's much more free speech forward. This is a otome visual novel, young maiden visual novel, and so you're going to be dealing and dating with a bunch of anime guys. This is $17.99 Japanese full audio. Guess I put that on the full list. I'm still very much trying to limit myself to very few, maybe the top 10 visual novels that ever existed. I don't want to go into a deep dive and potentially try and cover every single one of the millions that exist. That would be insane. Here we have a game called Soul Elegy, which looks like it's a Chinese card-based dungeon crawler, for lack of a better term. It's got a whole bunch of systems, and we've seen that type of design for Chinese games before where they're all over the place. It's early access, English is not supported, $13.29. Visually though, it doesn't look terrible, and I will grant it that. We have seen a lot worse unpolished Chinese games come out over the course of the past couple of years, but we still are very much getting flooded with Chinese games that are just trying to enter the global marketplace and have not done their market research at all, and are trying to sell very, very low quality, often just Famicom NES clone style games from the 80s, or just very low effort gambling games, or very low effort cell phone ports, or just bad games in general. Next, we have a game called Merchants of the Caribbean. This is one of these resource management games. More than anything else, it is visually nice, and it does seem like it has a pirate mini game here, but yeah, there's really not going to be much there. Let's see, here you have a time management pack. They're selling you for $63.99 of 13 different similar games. This alone, it's $5.59 right now. It supports English, German, and Russian. Yep. Hit that. We have the laid-back camp virtual lake Matosu, which is a VR experience, hanging out with anime characters as they're camping. I believe this is based on an anime show, a kind of slice of life experience show. It's just supposed to be chicken soup for the soul, basically. $19.99, Japanese full audio, a bunch of other languages in the interface. I'm gonna put this on the fall list, or probably already is on the fall list, but you can see it's like mixed reviewed. So I probably will remove it from the fall list fairly quickly next time I do a fall list cleanup and look at everything that is listed on the fall list. But obviously it doesn't have something polished enough or appealing enough for the fan base. Normally a game like that would have a built-in fan base that would be rabid and very supportive of it, so it must be pretty much not that good. Here we have Hocus 2, and I know this Hocus 1 has been on Steam for quite a long time, and so I was really surprised to see Hocus 2 just coming out now on Steam. It's $2.24, and if we look at this developer, Hocus 1, let's see, was in 2015. I don't think I've gotten around to playing it, or I did play it. Let's see if it says how many hours. No, I have 20 hours on record playing this. I probably rage quit this, actually, come to think of it. I probably just got tired of it, because the problem here is the visuals look cool and all, but it really is just like MC Escher style of graphics, and it was either super simple and I solved it in 20 hours, even though it's very positive, or it was or it was just repetitive and boring. You see these kinds of MC Escher puzzle elements in a lot of other games, which that does put me in a weird position, because I guess I need to put this on the fall list, and I may very well end up putting this on my wish list and buying it at some point. So I might be hitting a level where I've played games so long ago that I've forgotten whether I liked them or not, and now I'm playing the sequels to games that I didn't even enjoy that much in the first place. That probably won't always be the case. If I really, really hated a game, I more than likely will remember that I hated it and not play the sequel. But as I've continuously am playing new games, it's easier and easier to forget about what you have played and what you haven't, particularly if it's just a mediocre game in the middle. Those are very easy to forget about. Here we have another low-effort asset flip game called Russian Anime, which is just a first-person shooter with a bunch of visual assets that have been pre-purchased from a storefront and an anime character, and just trying to be as low-hanging fruit as possible. 84 cents, English only. This is the exact type of game that almost certainly, I would assume, is money laundering. That there's just some company somewhere, probably in Russia, making this and making it very cheaply, and then trying to get a bunch of people that they're going to launder money through them. So basically, the company that made this game, Anime Act, or the real people behind that company, would make this game, put it on Steam, then they would use shell corporations that they control to purchase the game and take dirty money or slightly dirty money, like maybe terrorism money, drug money, things that would be traced. They buy the game on Steam with that, and then Steam's records are harder to search, and so it launders the money and makes it clean money, because then on the books it looks like it's all profit from Russian anime as a video game. And that's hard to trace when there's a lot of people out there that aren't even bothering to try to trace that, and Steam has really no liability there to ensure things like that doesn't happen. And of course, this is all speculation. This might just be that somebody made a low effort game and then they put it up real cheap on Steam, and absolutely nobody ever buys it, and that may be the only thing. It also could be counter espionage in a lot of ways. You could potentially see a case where somebody like the Epic Store might have people make low effort garbage games and put them up on Steam to make Steam look worse as a storefront. Not that I think that really affects a lot of people, because I think a lot of people just never get down to the level in which they see a game like this. The only way I see these types of games, is because I'm looking at every single game that comes out every single day, or I'm trying to at least. Whereas if you're just looking at the front page of Steam, you will never see that. See a game like that. But if you look at the curator feed, you will see it. So just depends on how you use Steam, if you use Steam. And I think a vast majority of people use Steam to play the games they've already installed and purchased, and they're not really browsing for new purchases. Where if you compare that to something like Amazon.com, there's really no reason to go to Amazon.com if you're not shopping for something. You wouldn't go there to watch Prime videos if you'd already rented them, or read ebooks if you'd already purchased them. It's first and foremost a storefront, where Steam is half a storefront and half a game library manager. Moving on, we have a game called Table Tennis Pro, which is just another low effort game. The graphics look horrible. $10.49, allegedly full audio for each of its languages, which just really means that there is no actual spoken language dialogue in the game. Next, we have a game called Gold Mine, which is an asset flip game that, at least it's not a first-person shooter. It seems like in this case you're actually just trying to look for gold. Still, that doesn't look very interesting. Generally speaking, any game that has you simulating doing somebody's job, it's going to be incredibly boring, because jobs in general are incredibly boring, unless you're playing as like James Bond. Next, we have Airport Simulator 3 Day and Night. This one's probably trying to be confused with Microsoft Flight Simulator, and when you compare it to something like Microsoft Flight Simulator, you're probably going to have a much better experience. Although, in all fairness, this isn't a flight simulator, it seems, as much as running the operations of an airport. So refueling the plane, cleaning the plane, boarding and unboarding, packaging and depackaging the plane. This is selling for $19.99 discounted, and it's English and German full audio, which at that point I assume there is actual English and German language being spoken somewhat. Probably not a lot if I was to guess. Let's see. Next we have a game called Mind Over Melee Radio, which, yep, that doesn't look very good either. I could have pretty much curated almost every game that came out over the past 2 days since I last streamed on Wednesday, and just not had to talk about any games at all because they've all been so bad. We are in a growing slump. It may not be so much a valley as just a bottom or a floor, as we are just continuously not in a position to feel like any AAA games are going to come out anytime soon. We are just hearing either a deafening silence around the fact that there's just nothing new to talk about, or where that deafening silence is getting filled with whatever garbage anyone has to offer. The EU, I don't have an article for this, but the EU apparently has passed a law to protect kids, and so any game for kids cannot have loot boxes or gambling in them. I think that probably was already the law, and they're just restating it and reinforcing it. I don't know if that means games for kids can't have in-app purchases in them at all. I think it's just loot boxes and gambling mechanics. There is probably a good argument that if something a little bit more powerful than the European Union was able to force game companies into getting rid of in-app purchases for all kids games, that would be great. I would just make everybody happier except for the games companies, but you know what, screw them. Like, there's no nice way to even sugarcoat that such manipulative business practices should not be even tolerated.
I failed to understand you.
Well, I'm gonna lose here. But this will be the last game we play today, I think. We've barely gone 2 hours. I'm surprised we've even gone 2 hours. Here we have a game on Steam called The Midnight Eater, which has some dark screenshot syndrome. But the video might convince me. I don't think so, though. I think I'm gonna watch this video and see that it is just a horror game with a flashlight wandering around looking for pages. I like the thumbnail, though. That looks very nicely polished. $6.29 is also a fairly cheap game, and we're still seeing people claiming that they've been rated by the ESRB, and they haven't. There was a brief time up until like a year or two ago where you could get a free rating for a game if it was just going to be sold online and not in stores. Otherwise you have to pay to be rated and evaluated, and you can just like self-evaluate, but they stopped doing that. So pretty much any new game now that says ESRB is either actually rated by the ESRB, and you have to assume that, or somebody's just using this logo. That is something also Steam needs to probably stop allowing. Steam should probably come up with its own rating system that's a little bit more descriptive and a little bit better than ESRB, and have the publishers of games rate their own games that way. I mean, at a certain level, I guess they have done that because they introduced the mature content description that you're supposed to describe things, although sometimes the descriptions here can be very vague and there's no standardization here. Like hide your kids, for instance, in the mature content description, that's unprofessional. But see, that could be a nice little booby trap where if somebody does that and put that in the description, somebody at Valve should be able to look at that and say, okay, this person is not professional. This field was supposed to be plain text and easy to understand and not stylized or written as if it's advertisement. And so maybe you don't want to do business with people that put hide your kids in the mature content description, or maybe you want to at least send them an email and say, we need you to fix this, otherwise we're going to delist your game. There's a whole plethora of rules and regulations you could slightly enforce, like a home HOA enforces rules and regulations for homeowners, the homeowners association, and that's a great way to see who's going to push back and who's going to follow the rules and who's going to act professionally and who's going to be a pain in the butt. But you can see, particularly for this game Let It Flow, that this is just Olaf from Frozen, and Let It Flow is a parody of Let It Snow, so they're also using Disney properties or copyrights, close anyways. And this is just a troll joke game of no real value. We didn't even have a lot of job listings. So we did see that the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, has a job listing for a senior engineer in the Unity engine for a company called Play Everywhere in Seattle, Washington. This is a listing in particular. I haven't ever been to this page, so this would be like a great point to use my filters software and cosmetic filters to start like removing parts of this page so that it is more of a better experience visually if I ever come back here. Of course, this always ends up taking a little bit more time than I would want it to take, but I've actually gotten fairly good at this whole cosmetic filtering of pages to make them easier on the eye. There we go. And there we go. Seems like it doesn't want to show that. There we go. One more element. See, let's preview that. Nope, that's not what we want. Yeah. So zoom out, and then use another plugin I have to center the page and indent it like that. Maybe zoom back in at that point, back to 100%. And there you go. That's kind of a great example of being able to use uBlock Origin and another extension called Center Pages in Chrome to clean up a page like this on a website so that you can have better presentable content when you're just showing something else. You can also certainly continue down that path and filter out more of this if you want. But the real reason why you would want to do that is so this job listing, for instance, as senior engineer, well, I've just made these rules, so if I click here for a console engineer, the page stays the same even though it's a different page on the same site. So any page on the site is going to have those same blocks. So next time, if I ever wanted to look at a job listing, that would work fine. Although it does create potentially issues if you come to, say, the main page of IGDA here, and that there's still a lot being shown here. Not terrible, and maybe in your usage you would actually want to see all of this, but generally you never want to see the cookies notification. So instead of agreeing to that, let's just always get rid of it and hide it. I didn't agree to anything at all. And any kind of pop-ups like that. So yeah, showing off some of the tips and tricks. Also just wasting time. Anyways, moving on, we got like 3 more tabs. We have a game called My House, My Rules, which is just a horror dark screenshot game for a 254, bunch of languages. TechRaptor, we have literally one TechRaptor article today. Valve has announces an end to artifact development. They are kind of putting everything out as far as the content for Artifact, so that you could play with it free to play. They also, I think, are kind of putting out the content so that somebody somewhere might be able to use the artwork and make some other kind of game, which I think there probably is a chance of somebody succeeding there. But it really strikes to the heart of what is Valve really. Like, Half-Life Alyx gave this brief glimmer of hope that Valve may be back in the business of making video games and they might actually be able to succeed with that. But Artifact in particular has been a albatross around their neck, as they just did not design it or advertise it or promote it well. And they probably should have killed it even later, even earlier. Then we have a game on Steam here called Soul of Giga, which is seemingly a just kind of RPG turn-based game. Doesn't look particularly polished. $5.99, a bunch of languages. Nutch Lotus says, want to do gacha. I don't know what you specifically mean. Like, in Shadowverse? I mean, technically, opening packs is gacha. Certainly, in Shadowverse. And at the beginning of the stream, I did open 2 packs. But I don't particularly want to make a special effort here to open up a bunch more. I mean, I could open these 4 packs while we're here. But if you mean in Shadowverse, no, I don't want to put I'm sitting on gold for the next expansion so I can open packs for the new expansion. And I definitely don't want to put any money into this game. I do play a gacha game on my cell phone that called Destiny Child. It's a Korean game that's got a bunch of lewd anime waifus in it. Although on the Play Store version of it, it's fairly tame. Even in the uncensored version of it, it's still fairly tame. It's just kind of the implication more than anything else. But I definitely enjoy that game, Destiny Child, a lot. It has nothing to do with Destiny Child, the music group. Because of the artwork, it uses a technology called Live 2D to turn live 2D images in a way that makes them look like they're alive and they're moving. It's got decent story. It's constantly giving new content. So if you're an adult and interested in playing something more on the adult side, definitely I would say check out Destiny Child, but don't put any money into it. I've been able to be free to play on Destiny Child also, and I have almost all of the characters and pulls available. It's actually fairly generous, and if you get into the realm of spending money in Destiny Child in particular, you could easily spend $500 or more dollars a month. Also, the thing I love about Destiny Child and that got me into it as a gacha game is that the daily quests and everything can be automated. There's very little you have to do. You just have to set things up and hit go. There's about, I'd say 8 to 10 different things that you can do every single day to give you more of the premium crystals, where Shadowverse has never given me a single premium crystal. Maybe at the very beginning of the game it did, but I think I've been at 0 from the beginning. Whereas you can get premium crystals, premium currency in Destiny Child on a daily basis just by doing the daily quests, which are super easy. It's basically impossible to lose after you've established a team. Even from day one of playing Destiny Child, you can play on the lowest levels and still succeed. It's not really much of a game though, in all fairness, since everything is kind of automated. You're there just to maintain and keep on getting premium crystals on a daily basis. You're not really there to have any real challenge, or at least I've never gotten to a point where I've wanted to play in manual mode and have a real challenge. You can play that way. I just leave everything in auto mode. And since it's a cell phone game, like some of the boss fights will slow down your cell phone CPU so much that you can't play it in the sped up mode. So there's like a 1 times, 2 times, and 3 times multiplier of the speed of the game. And you have to, if you want to get the max amount of damage, you have to jump down to 1 times for some of the world bosses and the Ragnarok events. Yeah. Nuchlo said yes. Alright, well, I hope that satisfied you, Nuchlotus. I would say Shadowverse is kind of one of the worst games I've ever played as far as audio feedback and reward. Hearthstone is incredibly better when you open packs. It is much more of a interesting experience, and you get like visual and audio feedback, little fireworks going off, and things to really subconsciously make you want to spend more money. And I know that's a trick, certainly, but that doesn't stop me from really recognizing that it kind of works and it's visually appealing. So, and over the course of the 2 hours I've been streaming, the only game that's come out on Steam on this Friday is Escape Fish Stop 3D, which is obviously just a kind of low effort horror adventure game. It's early access for $4.99. It's English and Thai. You typically don't see Thai games come out. And I don't think there's any new Humble Bundles. You have 3 days left if you wanted to buy Tales of Love and Adventure Humble Bundle. So then that leaves me with no more news to talk about. Let's see, how do we get down here? So I'm going to wrap it up here. I definitely deserve and need to say thank you, a special thank you to Nutchlotus for jumping onto the chat and talking to me, because that is always very much appreciated. It often feels like I'm streaming to nobody, and very often I am streaming to nobody and nobody's watching, so it feels very lonely often. Thanks for watching and interacting, and otherwise I don't think I have anything else to say. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because those are all things YouTube wants me to do to promote my channel, as if YouTube really would promote my channel at this point. I don't think they promote anybody. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites to get backup notifications, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, you can either support me via Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me either a gift card or a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.